figure out why I couldn't
Non, non,
hear.
clique sur le portail bleu, là où les gens... Ouais,
We
ici,
have our panelists
une
here.
fois que tu as cliqué dessus, tu as un pop-up.
Hey, welcome.
Ça te
Come on
permet
in.
de rentrer dans la suite.
C'est où c'est celui-là là que tu vas tout de suite?
I see
I'm
Steve
here.
Orlando.
Hey, this is Jan, Hurricane Jan. Hi, Jan. How are you?
Johnathan
I
Chant.
am right behind you if you turn around. Hi. How are
Hey,
you?
Steve. How you doing? I'm Ryan at Golden Apple.
Good to
We've
see
probably met over the
you.
years.
Good to see you too.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good.
Glad
Sorry, I
you
was waiting to
connected.
be able to unmute myself, man. Sorry for the delay.
No, you're good. And there's Jeremy. Jeremy's coming in. He's going to be your moderator. I'm just.
Hey,
Yo.
Hey, Johnathan. How are you?
Did a good job.
Hey, Mark.
Very fun. So the seats are fun, right?
Well,
You guys
Yo,
are
yo.
on the Oculus
Hey.
before, or is this
they're cool, right? I can't
He's
beat
coming
VR,
in.
and it's amazing when it's a VR
I think we're
experience
just
versus
missing
This
a
is-
laptop experience.
Yeah,
Chris or Christopher.
this is
Right.
incredible.
a little
Yeah.
over
Yeah,
a
this is
year? Yeah.
really
This
awesome
is
world
great.
that they build in here.
So,
Have you spent time in here before and done any sort of hangout in alt VR?
Good to see
Not all
you.
VR, but I've been in
Yeah,
like the
everyone's
Horizon
welcome to
and
move
the
closer
other
to
ones.
the screen as
I'll
the
look for you.
If you
speakers
guys
are
find it
coming
hard to
soon
see,
for
you
this
can feel
panel.
free to move closer to
Is
the
a way
screen,
ask the
okay?
host how to fly
Yeah, you're welcome
and
to
how to
move
fly in
closer
here.
to the screen because the speakers are
No,
on Zoom
can
for
you?
this panel.
Sorry,
If you,
Ryan.
I have to jump off,
Nope.
but ask one of these
If
hosts
you
and they'll
find it
click you
hard to
through.
Never
There's
mind,
a
I
way
see
of
him. I see
actually
him joining
being able
now.
to like actually go up in the sky and fly around the world.
Hey, actually,
Heck, okay.
the flying's
I
actually
meant-
turned. Hey, everybody.
Oh, no flying.
Somebody
Hey,
just
Kendra. So why don't
It is possible in a lot of ways, but in this world, I think they just want to make it.
yes.
ask you questions.
Oh, cool. Thank you,
Focus.
man.
And then you can
Snuck up on me.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah.
All good, all good.
Are you
No feet, you know.
Yeah, I was going to explain that. Oh, hey, Christopher, how are you? You're unmuted.
Okay.
Can't hear you. You gotta unmute yourself.
Ryan, you gotta make Priest a host, or he won't be able to unmute.
There.
There we go.
Okay, sorry about that.
No,
Hello.
we're good. We're good. Hey guys, welcome. We're gonna get started in just a minute. Just want to welcome you and thank you for even going through with this crazy idea that we're doing a VR conference. We're on Zoom here. Hopefully the next one will get you guys in headsets or on your computer in VR as an avatar. I own Golden Apple Comics. I'm one of the 3 organizers. I'm not your moderator. That's Jeremy's job, Mr. Heavy Metal himself. But I am going to be here not only for support, and I could interject, questions if needed, if we have a lull, but also people in VR as avatars might have questions for you, and I'm going to relay those to you when we get to like a questions part.
Okay, when you say relay, are you going to like speak to us? Or are you sending us those little messages and things? Do I have to read
just
something?
talking to you in real time.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
I'm
As long
gonna
as there's no
say-
reading involved.
No. It's gonna be, no, I'm going to ask a question like, hey, Jennifer568 wants to know.
So for
which
everybody
one of
in
your
VR,
classic
you're getting
comics
to
was your
watch
favorite?
the behind the
That kind of
scenes,
thing.
even though that's
you're
And then
gonna
we just
say-
smack
not
her
what
down
you
and
should
go,
be
"No, we're here to
watching
talk
right
about
now.
entropy."
Kendra right here is
But
where
you-
you're going to
but
ask
the-
your
but just
questions
for a
and
quick
she'll
thing,
relay it
your
to Ryan.
response- Your response
So
to that should
Kendra will be our
well, hey,
microphone
Jennifer
for the
1621.
questions.
Here's your answer. We want them to feel like they are interacting with you, even though we're on Zoom. Does that make sense?
It does. I'll do my best. I'm very old. Okay, bear that in mind.
Just quickly, can I have Jonathan and Mark rename themselves so that it looks like your full name is for the Zoom? You're now co-host, so I can't rename you.
Hold on, let me.
Just put your last name in the case of Jonathan and Mark. Yeah, just separate.
Both names or just one name?
Sorry?
Your full name.
Full name,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet all of you, by the way. If you ever make it to Los Angeles, we should do an in-store at Golden Apple. But for now, we're going to be on Zoom and having some fun. So there are people from all over the world in a virtual space watching you on a giant screen. And
do I owe any of them money? Is that
You
that's what
probably
I'm
owe
really
a lot of
worried
them
about.
money.
It's an interesting concept. There's also people watching on Zoom, and there's also people watching this live on YouTube.
Okay. Cool. So the parts that the people who are viewing are seeing, that's only the pinned parts, is that correct? Or are they going to see all of these blocks?
I think just the pinned people.
Okay.
So it's your floor, Jeromy. You're the moderator.
All right. Just
I'm gonna mute myself.
Let me know when we're starting.
Don't do that. Don't mute yourself. I'll get you counseling.
You guys are live in world right now, so go ahead. And
you're good.
Good. Perfect.
We're live in world right now.
Introduce everybody and go for it.
All right. Well, hello everybody who is viewing us live on YouTube, viewing us live in virtual reality. Oh, I see the people starting to walk up over to the stage. You can like wave down to them. Hello. So hi everybody. I am Jeromy DeChant. I am the marketing and sales director for Heavy Metal. And with me today, I have some of what I would consider some of my probably favorite people to work with, and probably some of our favorite titles that we've published. Going down the line, guys, can we just have you introduce yourself? Well, there's not really a line.
That's right.
Can we start with Steve, and then go John, and then Mark, and then Mr. Priest?
Sure. Well, I'm Steve Orlando, writer of String Theory and Starward for Heavy Metal, not to mention the Boulay Brothers Halloween Takeover that came out last year for Halloween, which I co-edited and curated with the Boulays. And then outside of Heavy Metal, folks might know me from nearly every DC property, for better or worse. You may hate me from those DC properties too, but I'm there. Wonder Woman, Justice League of America, Batman, Supergirl, and now I'm doing a bunch of originals, Heavy Metal included, but also over at Marvel. And now I'm doing a bunch of originals, Heavy Metal included, but also over at Marvel, just announced for Scarlet Witch, as well as Marauders, X-Men Green, and a host of other things. And happy to be here talking about comics in the virtual world.
And Steve, I love your shirt. We didn't plan this. This was
yeah.
Not
How about
planned.
that?
This was not intentional that we were gonna be twinsies today, but love it. John, how about you?
I'm Johnathan Chance. I'm a creator writer of The Boy Conquered a Mountain. That's from Heavy Metal. That came out this year, and I was at WonderCon there with Heavy Metal. Also, I've had come out this year that's been coming out monthly with Blood Moon. Is Cover the Dead with Lime, which is kind of a historical horror series that I've got with them. I've always been college stories through the years.
All right. And all the way from Ireland, Mark, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Nice to meet everyone. Great to see some of my co-panelists again. My name is Mark McCann. I'm from Belfast in the north of Ireland, and I got my start in classic sci-fi mag 2008. So it's, you may know it for Judge Dredd and things like, Road Trooper, things like that. And from there, I went to Heavy Metal, where I began writing short stories, short sci-fi horror type stuff, where I got to work with some very talented creators that I've been a big fan of their work. Will Simpson, who created all the concept work for Game of Thrones, and Boo Cook, who you may know his work from Elephant Man. He also works on Judge Dredd, and Glenn Fabry, one of my sort of artists, artistic mentors, I guess you would say. So I went from there to Heavy Metal, and for Heavy Metal, I worked on the Virus imprint and created Never Never, which did quite well for the company, and it was a creator-owned project, but it's since been amalgamated into the main Heavy Metal line, which is great. I've got a lot of other projects in the pipeline, either connected to or, working around that. So I'll tell you more about them maybe a bit in the future, but for the meantime, I'll keep them on the down low.
There we go. Mark, what time of the day is it over there for you?
It is coming up on 7 p.m.
Oh, nice and early for you.
Yeah,
And then a man who needs no introduction but still appreciates one, Mr. Christopher Priest.
Oh, hi. Yeah, so hi, I'm Christopher. I am writing Entropy for Heavy Metal and an email to Mark that I started like 8 months ago. And I go, I need to really, hit send on that. And hello, Steve. I haven't seen you in ages. It's good to see you again, and everybody, and nice to meet everybody here. And I've been around since the Nixon administration, so I've written just about everything. And I was going to be an artist, but Joe Rubenstein, talked me out of it. So there you go. That's all you need to know about me.
There we go. And, I appreciate that you're keeping it heavy metal forward, but people you will need to know you from Black Panther and Vampirella and Black Adam currently, like, little things there. You're allowed to say it. I'm the marketing director, but I'm lenient. I'm nice. So guys, thank you for that. And again, hello everybody. I can see like somebody looks like Mario in the little thing. Hi, Mario. So this is really different. We're gonna go through and we're gonna kind of go over a few questions here, and then we're gonna open up to you guys in the audience from the various different audiences. So if you come up with a question or you start to think of it as we're talking, try to save it, and we will have one of our moderators give it to us, and then we will of course get to as many questions as we can, hopefully all of them. And now somebody zoomed in so I can see myself. All right. So guys, let's talk about your titles in specific. I know your titles probably better than anybody because it's my job as the marketing director to sell your titles to people in bookstores and places like Golden Apple. But let's talk a little bit about them individually. Starting with Steve, I remember in our first little kickoff meeting, you were like, oh yeah, Starward is like if Sailor Moon and She-Ra had a heavy metal baby. And I was like I sat up, I was like, okay, tell me more about this, because those are things that I love. And I was probably one of the titles that at the kickoff meeting I was more excited for than anything.
Is everything okay?
Well, that's what we like to hear. Well, everything you said is true. Sure. Starward is sort of a book that was moving around in my head while I was working on Wonder Woman.
If you have any questions for the panel, come walk up here and let Kendra know your question. So if you have questions for the panel, please come up to the front and talk to Kendra right here.
I wanted to tell this type of story for a while.
So come up here and ask Kendra.
What we built it around, not just my writing, but just incredible art by Yvonne Chabrin. Who brought this world to life, brought these characters to life. Who are these characters? You were talking about the 7 Starward sisters, people who before creation itself were related and fought in a final battle as the daughters of Atlas against chaos. However, in from God perceptions, things like time and space are relative. So they lose a climactic battle. They're cast out through time and space, and it takes a couple thousand years for them to land in human lives. And then this is the story about them waking up in those bodies and realizing who they are and this greater world around them. And honestly, the thing that I'm most excited about is that it's a book not just about, doing a book, to be frank, about saving the world almost seems a little quaint in the current mindset. We're shooting for something a little subtler with Starward. Of course, there's gigantic cosmic celestial bombast and all that, the things you expect from comics. But this is a book where characters are fighting to give people a fighting chance. I think it's very easy in day-to-day life to feel like the deck is stacked against you, oftentimes because it quite literally is, depending on your background. And having gone through that myself through a variety of vectors, it just felt sort of simplistic to say, okay, we're going to fight this big evil person, and then all of our problems will be solved, right? Like if this was DC, oh, we killed Darkseid, evil is dead, everything is good now. It almost seems a little quaint. here, we have heroes who are giving it their all and fighting this cosmic battle. And at the end of the day, what they're looking for is an even playing field. Chaos, you find out, has infected all of human history. And we find out that really, in a sense, the deck has been stacked against our entire species. But killing one ancient evil isn't going to magically fix people. And I almost didn't feel right writing a story where that happened. So in Star Wars, we're talking about how what we want is an equal playing field. We are fighting, like I said, for a fighting chance, fighting to be able to actually have, what we're talking about, equality. And that's, of course, through this Kirby-esque cosmic lens. So yes, it's a giant bombastic story that I put together with a lot of things that I wasn't allowed to do on Wonder Woman, which is how it goes. But at the same time, it also says something that I'm really proud of, and engages in the modern moment in a way that, to be quite honest, when we started putting this together over 2 years ago, I couldn't have predicted. But here we are, and I'm really proud that we have a story with all the trappings of a comic blockbuster, but with a resolution and an endpoint that I think is really subtle and something to be proud of in 2022.
Now, Steve, yours is something a little different for heavy metal. Maybe something we're not particularly known for with heavy metal is your story is actually kind of a YA story. Was it different going into a YA thing? I think we have like 2 YA titles out, and both of them are on this panel. So let's.
Well, of course, the challenge is, of course, what is the heavy metal version of young adults? Because anyone who's seen obviously the iconic movie or read the iconic stories going back into the 70s and 80s, this is a brand and a legacy brand that I'm excited to be part of, but that is known for pushing the envelope. So how do you push the envelope within content that largely features people of teenage, And so what we decided is, of course, we couldn't just have it full of some of the provocative content that you might find in like the Boule Takeover or any other issue of heavy metal, rightfully so. But what we can do is take that subversive and provocative sort of point of view and use it as a lens for teenage struggles. So, I mean, yeah, we're going to show teens doing what we can get away with them doing, of course, but it's also going to be, it's both age appropriate but subversive. The way that they talk about life, the point of view is still rebellious. The relationship with authority is still rebellious. And whereas frank as we can be about the lives of true teenagers without it being Sailor Moon meets Euphoria or something like that, which we just could not publish in a in a mainstream book. So it was about taking the ideas of heavy metal, the ideals of heavy metal, which in my mind have always been be provocative, again, be subversive, challenge authority, challenge what's acceptable, and then doing that within the tenets of young adults. So challenge the standard types of relationships, challenge who gets to be the star of these series, challenge how these people view the structures in their lives, their parents, their goals, their studies, and things like that. So we wanted to, we wanted to take heavy metal and make it a philosophy, basically, and then apply it to the young adult sphere.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Swapping right back into another YA series that we did. John, let's talk about The Boy Who Conquered the Mountain. Another one, and I'm probably going to say this about everybody on the panel, but like everybody on this panel is like one of my favorites. I would have slept in today if I could have, but I was like, I got to get up for these people. John, let's talk about The Boy Who Conquered the Mountain, which was a virus graphic novel that we put out. Can you tell us just kind of a quick elevator pitch of that story?
I think it's John who does the Eye Collector with Virus Comics, put it pretty bluntly in like 3 words. Was a samurai kaiju horror story, and I think that kind of pretty much puts the nail in the head. Oh, okay, it's got samurais, kaiju, and it's a horror story. But also on top of that, it's like so much more. Like we were just saying that it's really relatable to teenagers, but also adults and up kind of thing. Like it has that combination of applying to both, that it's an inspiring story as well. It's definitely like your typical kind of, it's like a Knight's Tale, but set in Asia in the 1600s, but with fantasy. And I think the whole idea that came from this story originally was another publisher, and we won't mention the name, was interested in a kaiju story, and a lot of kaiju stories are kind of modern based, modern times, and I was thinking, well, a lot of those stories have been done and they've been done very well. It's like I'm all about finding the most unique story or something, even if it's very difficult to find that hasn't been done before, even though it's incredibly hard to do. So I first wanted you to get excited about doing this story if I'm going to do this story, and they ended up not being the right people to go with anyway. But I thought, well, if it was set in a time and a place where it was all history and it was a time of myth and magic and a time that was innocent and the children are innocent as well, and put it in a placing where these creatures, or in this case a monster, can exist because it's so far back when they talk about these mythological creatures and stuff like that, it'd be more believable. And like you were just saying about Stephen Lando's story there, even though it's been such a long period of time, definitely people can relate to the story, where definitely where the child in the beginning is the kid who is the underdog, who people were kind of stepping on and don't think much of, and in this tragic story where he is literally the only one that can do anything about it, and it comes from within. It's a very spiritual story as well. There's definitely among the horror elements, I can't go without having horror elements. That's I think what my passion is, because with horror stories and sci-fi, all the things that we don't know and the unknown will continue to be fascinating, not just to myself, but to millions of people, I think. That whole unknown aspect and the possibility of it being possibly real from history and things like that. But it is allegorical as well, where we can believe that things literally can be as big as a mountain that we can't overcome. And I think at the core of it, even though it's a good story, an enjoyable fantasy story, and I'd love to do a method with a cliffhanger to continue the series, if everyone would want to continue with that, that someone like this can overcome something so great. And any child and any teenager can see that, whatever background they're from, even with the horror elements, they can see that somewhere in there, this is relatable to me. Even though these things seem so difficult, and that is the prime time for a teenager when things are so emotional and sensitive. So yeah, it's got that, which is a part of me too. I'm a sensitive person, I think, and I think that is put into infuses the story, I think, as well, where anyone can read it and can relate to it.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite things about your story is that it's set in like classic Edo style Japan, and then there are those horror elements, but it's still like it's very clearly like geared towards younger people, but with an overall adult message. So that it's a great combination of those, and I think the art deserves mention in that book because it's very cinematic, and it's incredibly done. Like panel to panel is like a movie scene. And I think that's one of my favorite things about.
Can I quickly say? I would love to say, you know what, you based, because I almost forgot. I've got to mention. So it was just me and Emi Utura that made that whole book, and his art from the get-go. I worked with him on a short horror anthology story, and I thought, this guy is so fantastic. He is like, and there are other artists that the same way as well with me, with different stories, but it's like, he totally gets me straight away, and he works with as well. But that's the intention, because I've come from a filmmaker background. It's not the intention of, I'd love this to be a movie or a TV show, but because I've come from that, I do storyboard all the comics that I do, whether or not, I'm up really late, and whether or not if I've even got time to do them. I really, in a good way, it's not good to be a control freak, but in the way of art and creativity, to get it precisely the way you want it and the vision to come across.
Hi.
With the panel.
How's it going?
Yeah, with this one, we truly got this epic Where are you from? That originally was going to be about
America,
and
Los
told
Angeles.
America, I'm so sorry, but
America,
the way
okay,
the story is building, it's so much bigger. And I hope you haven't got anything on, but it's going to be a bigger story. And I'm so happy I went with that. And it really did become a cinematic kind of story, or there could be a series, something like that, with all the elements going on.
Perfect. Now, in the dark there in Ireland, to talk about a dark story, let's talk, Mark, a little bit about Never Never. I believe we've been describing it at conventions as a dark Peter Pan story with cannibalism. Let's go right from like the YA straight into dark Peter Pan with cannibalism.
Sure. Well, I mean, that is very much how it began life. It was I enjoy moral dilemmas, and I also enjoy juxtaposition of ideas. So, in the case of Never Never, if you've ever seen the film Lord of the Flies, you can recall some of the atrocities that take place whenever a small group of boys become stranded on an island. And all I really did with Never Never was took the concept of Peter Pan, J.M. Barrie's universe, and I decided to apply real world principles to it. So I imagined an island that was cut off from, the rest of the world, somewhere that you would have no real way of getting to unless you sort of stumble into it, kind of like the Bermuda Triangle. And the idea that Petros, the main antagonist, is
welcome to
a
Talker.
boy who
If you need help with
has
anything,
been
let me
put
know.
there.
It's just
and
I was worried
his
that
main
it might
aim
be
was to
distracting to the
initially
people that are
be a
watching the live
benevolent
stream.
kind of benefactor for the lost,
Okay.
and the
But there's
abused,
also a
and all
main
these
lobby
children
here.
who he himself
You go
had seen suffer
and
in
there's
various
the main lobby,
incarnations,
the portal's over
in its
there.
journey into
So
our world.
when the
And so the
panel's
idea
happening,
that you would want to
I
see
think we
it,
should
you would
just
want to
have
be
our attention focused on the people speaking,
somebody,
the artists,
a benevolent
and then we
type
can
of figure
have
for them.
conversation
But
afterwards.
the reality
You
of the island is
Okay.
You don't age, and there's
your name's John?
finite resources. So what happens whenever you start to run
Name
out
is
of
John?
resources? In an
Syrian.
environment where you can't age, you're not going to die, but you may
John Trent.
suffer with gnawing
Ross,
hunger of
Woodstock Ross,
starvation
nice to meet
continually because you've got nothing to eat. But also, what happens to the psyche of boys who have no adult supervision, no oversight, no moral code? And so what you have is you have eternal cannibals slowly going insane from lack of any sort of outside value system, any sort of direction. And the one thing that keeps them in check is a benevolent pseudo deity who's become almost like a Charlie Manson type cult leader. But things have gotten so far out of his control that all he can really do is appease them at this point. So that was the setup for Never Never.
Little bit, very little bit.
I wanted to interject the idea of a young girl's coming of age story. So I mean, we've seen a lot of it before in teen dramas, and I wanted to do something very specific to me, I guess, because Winter comes from a family that is falling apart for numerous reasons, but one of the big ones is that her mother is suffering from mental illness, and the family isn't coping well. They're struggling to compensate. So I didn't allude to what it was exactly.
A little bit of
I
guns.
was thinking bipolar
my
because
friends,
my wife actually suffers from bipolar, and I've experienced this myself. I've experienced somebody's personality flip.
Yes.
And
one of
so
them,
it
I
became
think, just
fascinating
celebrated
to me
the
that
Mother
what
Goddess.
would this look like for a young girl who needs the maternal supports of her mother, and her mother sometimes is a completely different person, but also from her father's perspective. Her dad is the kind of like the moral compass in the story, because he's a guy who is holding things together by a thread, and he's also the strength that Winter draws upon in her darkest moments. So I wanted to put a coming of age journey into the midst of this madness that is the Never Never, and see how it would play out. So it's parts of it I only really touched upon. Like there's a whole area that I'll come back to with the sequel, and that is that you have fictions who've been written for a specific purpose, questioning their own autonomy. How much of what they do is them, and how much of what they do is just something that's been written for them as characters. And so there's things that I wanted to explore more, but I couldn't really touch upon. But with Never Never, it's for me, it's a concept. It's a concept that looks into moral dilemma, but also injects very strong character work. Wow, as strong as I could make it anyway. I wanted to write these as realistic, believable characters, even to the point where Petros, as much of a horrible, evil, really twisted character as he is, in the back of his head there is justification for what he's doing. He can morally justify why he is the way he is. I mean, I've watched a lot of true crime. I've read a lot of serial killer dramas, and Petros is very much the typical sort of semi the deity narcissistic psychopath, but he's also he was created. He wasn't just born that way. He was created, and many things made him that. So for Never Never for me is just it was a concept that I ran with and tried to make as interesting and twisted as possible, but also give it a real human heart in the protagonist Winter, because she is on a journey, and at the end of it she will be radically changed, radically altered. And it's also, I guess, a
Sure, no problem.
as much of a coming of age story as it is, it's also I guess a love letter to the family unit. Whatever your family may be, whether it's your friends, whether whoever you count as family, you've got people in your life that you can draw upon for strength to bolster you in times of extreme difficulty.
My favorite part of this is, like, as you're going through this dark and serious description, is like in my head I'm like, this is Peter Pan and the Lost Boys, but it's also like you said, it's Lord of the Flies. It's this dark, like gritty, and for those who haven't read it yet, it gets pretty bloody and serious really fast. And yeah, the protagonist is just kind of thrown into this whole world, and it's just fascinating. And it had, as you mentioned at the top of the panel, it had great success that even us at Heavy Metal did not expect. And I think it was one of the top selling indie comics, up there with Something's Eating the Children for last year and the year before, and now it's collected into a trade. I don't. Are you proud? Like, how do you feel about kind of where it's grown to?
Well,
hey, hello.
I guess vindicated.
Hello, how you
because
doing?
I
1 second, hold on.
knew that when it started as a kernel of an idea, I knew that I could make it into something viable.
Hello,
with
hi.
the character work.
Hi, how can I help you?
So,
I'm here for the event.
sorry guys, I'm getting a message
okay.
saying turn on the lights in my room. So
Yeah, you're the host. You're the
I'll
host
hop
of
up
this
and turn on the light
I
here.
am one
I'll
of
be
the
right
hosts.
back.
Okay.
It is quite dark. We're getting a very like eerie.
Are you studying?
But it's fitting for her.
Hey,
No,
sorry about that. We're just
No, you
couldn't see you.
No, I'm a creepy guy anyway, so I was going for the back. But yeah, I mean, I feel vindicated that Never Never worked, and a large part of it working was the creative team, because guys like Phil Buckingham, the artist, and Agnes Pausa, the colorist, had a very strong feel for how it was going to look. But then we had Christopher
I am
Lair
asking
doing
what
covers.
job you done
And
in
Christopher
your
is a
daily life.
European artist. He's from France, and his stuff, whenever I was introduced to it, was really quite unnerving. It was creepy. It was terrifying. I knew that his covers alone could sell that book, which I
Hello.
maintain that they did. And I also had, you know, two other great guys, Peter Duncan, my editor, a friend, and Peter is rock solid and he has a really good eye. And I like somebody who will question my ideas.
Are you recording
and
it?
has no real compunction
We're
about
recording that.
telling me
Okay.
whenever they don't like something. You know,
Alright,
I
awesome.
don't like to be let
Yeah.
let
And this will be
completely
going
loose
on all
to do
day
whatever
long.
I want. I do like to have
All
someone to have
day.
reins.
Yeah,
So,
we have
he was
10
great.
different
David
panels that'll
Withers
go
was great,
between now and 10
letterer.
p.m. and then we
I
have an
knew
after
the
party.
team,
Or
if
goes
we all
until
came
9
together,
and then the after party's from
we
9
could
to
make
10.
a product that people would be interested in. So the success
Okay,
to
be right back,
me
okay?
was vindicated.
Yeah, I'll
and
be here.
it was
I'm gonna
just
tune in. I'll be in
relieving
and out.
that people
Awesome.
actually
Bring your
enjoyed it.
friends.
Great to have you.
It's been really fantastic to see the response, and you know,
Hey, John.
I'm very excited about writing
Hello.
more
Hello.
on my
Hello.
universe. As I've mentioned, you know, I've got
Yeah, you did mention a sequel, and I was like, as the marketing director, do we allow this?
Hello.
Like, we haven't officially announced a sequel, but we'll tease that there could be something in the works.
Hello.
Hi, John.
It's like this.
Hi,
I
John.
would never as
Hi.
part of something
Hi,
bigger.
do you have a question?
And if a sequel should, well, I
In
mean,
which topic?
there's a lot of things sitting, waiting to go.
Do you have a
and all I
question
want
for
is
the
a green light.
panelists?
So we'll see what happens. But you know, I mean,
Question for
I'm
the
working on a
panelist.
lot of different things at the minute.
I
But
know.
I feel
I
never
don't know
will always be
which
quite
topic
special
they
to
will
me
talk
because it was
still
the
now. I don't know. I'm not listening that.
it was the risk. It was the
They're
rolling
comic
of the
book
dice to see if
creators,
it could
and they're
work out.
talking about their
And
books
and
and their
did.
world.
So
Okay,
so
they
yeah, we'll see.
create a comic
But
books.
yeah, you know, I've loved
I
the
never
response
read
from
comics.
readers. It's
I
been
watch movies
really
only.
delightful. So
I didn't
see
have
Well, a
people
lot of
who
these
are
comics have been turned
genuinely
into movies.
enthusiastic about your work. And I live in Ireland, so it's incredibly small over here. And,
You interested in comics?
trying to get into the U.S. market, trying to
This
be
is a
noticed
comic book
as a writer is
convention.
very difficult. So
What?
This is a
the
comic book
idea that
convention.
I've managed to creep in there
Okay.
and have an impact
You
in
write
a
any
massive
comics?
North American
I
market.
don't
No,
write any
we're
comics.
producing
I
the
sell
event.
them.
It was really
All of
delightful.
these
sell
guys
them.
write and draw
Perfect.
comics.
Seems there's
Alright.
more and more of
To
you
sell
popping up. Sorry to
comic
jump
books.
in, but one of our other panelists is Hannah Rose May. She has a new image book called Rogues Gallery. She's an actor and she's Irish, has one of your accents. Garth Innes is on our next panel.
Garth is actually Garth and I have a lot of friends in common.
Yeah.
Because he'd obviously moved on.
In our country,
But we had the same sort of trajectory in a lot of ways because he went through 2000 AD and he wrote Dread, and you know we know a lot of the same people. But so he would have artists like John McCrae, who he's worked with, who John moved back to Belfast. I know John, you know, from working with a friend of my old boss in the comic book store, Fred Collier. So we've got all these weird connections. I've only ever met him once, and Glenn, obviously Glenn Fabry, who you know did all the covers on Preacher and Hellblazer for Garth. I sort of came into comics with Glenn because I had no real intentions. I was going to go down the direction of novels, and it was Glenn who said you should give comics a shot.
You
So I
pray
did.
any god?
Well, I just want to let you know, FanCon's got a big Irish component of creators coming in. So thanks for joining us.
I'm so
I
sorry.
think we're
I want
gonna
to talk to you more.
throw
but
it
I
over
have
to
pay
Chris
attention
next,
to
huh,
this,
Jeremy?
John.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Mr. Priest,
Alright.
Mr. Christopher Priest, you have a title that started
we'll
coming out
be
this
here all
year
day.
from the world of Tarna, which is obviously
There's
Heavy
portals
Metal's
back there.
big flagship girl,
They'll take you to the
our
lobby
Wonder Woman,
too,
our
and you can
Batman,
see what's going
and
on
you
out
have
there.
your own story with sort of
Yeah,
her
go check those
foil
out.
character. Tell us a
There
little
is a
bit about
lobby?
Entropy.
Do you see where the portal
okay,
is that says FanConXR?
Yeah.
Where do I start?
Back
All right,
there in
so
the corner?
I think it's
and that will
it's
take
fair
you
to
to
say
the
that
lobby,
in literature almost everything's been done. I can't imagine, you know, the struggle to try to think of as Mark was saying, trying to think of like, well, what can I think of that hasn't been done? Nothing. Everything's been done. So I think, we find interesting ways to tell classic stories or to build on classic ideas. And then to go back to something that Steve was talking about earlier, where Steve and I have both been working with corporate characters, and it's not necessarily a throwing shade at any company to say that companies are going to be protective of their IPs, and we have to put the toys back where we found them. And what's interesting is that if you're a writer is always in search of the truth. I am always trying to find what is true. How do people actually talk? How do people act? What is human behavior actually like?
Can you see a white triangle
When
on the
you're
screen?
doing commercial writing, you have to function within a framework, and you can't get too high, you can't get too low, you can't. Now we come to heavy metal, where it's always been about adult themes and adult concepts, and there are, to my knowledge, there are no guardrails. There is sort of an almost unlimited canvas for creativity, and if you've been spending 40 years writing in a very constrained environment, it feels weird being here. It feels odd to not have somebody go, don't do that, or to not get your story back. I can't actually tell any stories about.
Well, we're a little bit of the opposite. Yeah, we're like, no, do that. They said no, do it.
Yeah. But I can't give you any real examples from my career without getting some company mad at me. But I'm sure Steve and I have both gotten stuff back from the review process, and there's all these really bad, stupid notes. Like the duck can't quack because we have a deal with quackers, and we can't do that anyway. So it's kind of neat to be in this environment where you could go, all right, so here's the Galactus story, or here's the Green Lantern story. These are old stories. They're old as Aladdin and his magic lamp. It's here's this mail carrier, this postal worker, who is given almost unlimited cosmic power. Go write that story. Except that I don't have to put the toys back when they're done, and I don't have to be very careful. I don't have to worry about the duck quacking, and it's just kind of this exhilarating thing. Entropy is a classic story of this omnipotent force called Keiko. I didn't name it Keiko. Keiko was a whale. I didn't. Anyway, this unlimited force called Keiko that in Heavy Metal Magazine number 318, which I believe just came out within the last month or two.
Yes.
Keiko is part of this universe's speculum, this multiverse that heavy metal is building, and each of these 9 universes, they all have some avatar that represents the culmination or the idea of that universe. So, for example, Tarna is the avatar, or what they call a Meridium, that represents the idea of that universe. Keiko is like your slacker cousin, who is always borrowing money and is always screwing up and is always getting drunk, and Keiko he's just not cooperating. So Keiko is like this rogue universe among this multiverse, who is ping-ponging around and causing trouble. But Keiko does not have a meridium to himself. So Keiko is trying to communicate with his creatures, and every time he so much as whispers a hello to one of his creatures, he blows up a planet. So in Heavy Metal Magazine 318, we tell that story where it finally occurs to the schmuck universe, you know what? I need to get an avatar too. So I need to go and find a herald, much like Galactus went to go find a herald to represent me. you know. So Tap, you know, he for whatever reasons he finds this mailman, you know, and it says, "You will represent me." And then he blows up the mailman's, you know, he blows up the planet, you know, and destroys everything that this postal worker, that this poor guy ever knew. His family, his friends, everything's gone. The planet's gone. Blew up everything. And he's like, "Why did you do that?" And Keiko's like, you know, Keiko says that, you know, "If you betray me, I will destroy your planet." But he destroys the planet anyway, you know, and the postal worker's like, "Well, why did you do that?" He goes, "Well, I told you if you betrayed me." You know, he goes, "Well, I didn't betray you." And Keiko's like, "You haven't betrayed me yet, but you will," because he's omnipotent and he knows sooner or later the guy will betray him. So we're off to that adventure here where we have this person who has lost everything, suffered this devastating loss, but given this power, and there is this process of rebellion where he is now become what we are calling a crusader, and that Keiko has had a number of these heralds that he calls crusaders. He has had 10 so far. So this new character, who we will call Entropy, or who is eventually named Entropy, becomes the 11th crusader for Keiko. And Entropy's mission, the first mission Keiko gets him is, okay, you're my new crusader. You're crusader number 11. Your job, your first mission is to go kill the 10th crusader. Go kill the person that you're replacing. That's the ultimate in political hackery there. So our initial series, our initial 5 issues here, is about the creation of this character and his efforts to rebel against essentially a sentient universe that is out to kill him. It's a very wild ride. It's really out there conceptually, and in terms of that search for the truth, in terms of exploring these different concepts in human behavior and human nature, and go, look, this is a concept that you've seen before, that we have never been allowed to take to its obvious conclusions, because we have to sell, you know, these lunch boxes, and we have to protect this IP, and somebody's got a movie or some socks with his face on it. With this series, expect the unexpected. Just the guardrails off, and we are just having a blast with it. It's an amazing series, and I just feel very thrilled to be part of it.
I want to shout out to our VR cameraman who's walking around and actually showing you guys. I don't know if you noticed this. Our covers, including the Entropy Breaking Bad cover, right there, is in the virtual world, so people are able to go up and check out the covers of your books. So it's pretty neat. So big shout out to the VR team for putting that together, because I'm seeing it like happen. But yeah,
and they're huge too, by the way. They're like size of a building. Like you know what I mean? Like you walk up to it and you're staring at it, you know, like this giant cover of this comic book. You know, we want to
I expect advertising of equal size, Jeromy, for New York Comic Con in a couple months, by the way. Yeah. So I want to see obviously these 4 books, Times Square,
building size.
You know, yeah, fuck Black Adam. I want us to be like the movie, Chris, not your book.
That's all right. Wow, that's very specific.
The world, the VR
I want the hierarchy
world
of power in Times Square advertising to change.
Nice.
So
we're kind of like, it's kind of like Times Square. The VR world is called Horizon City. It's kind of, just to throw a couple IPs out there, like a Blade Runner, futuristic, you know, sci-fi, heavy metal world.
Okay, yeah, very heavy metal.
You know, if you know, when you get above the world, if the camera shifts up, you can see these skyscrapers in the back and the horizon. It's a very cool futuristic world that you guys are broadcasting from. So we wanted to make it not only look but feel like you're in kind of a heavy metal environment. So
yeah, Ryan, my expectations are really expanding every minute. Like the camera pans around. Like next time we do this, if we get headsets, I expect that all of us can like appear from that spaceship, like pro wrestling style.
Yeah, check it out. They're showing you the world. Look at the feed. It's amazing.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I want to be able to like superhero landing off one of these buildings, giant confetti. Some song that I don't have the rights for is playing. This is what I want to have happen.
Yeah, and this is only one of like 5 worlds we're using. For instance, George C. Romero is going to be in a zombie apocalypse type of world called the Undead District. You know, aptly. So things like that. We're just having a lot of fun.
So we're gonna open it up to questions. If anybody in any of the audiences have any questions, I do want to take a quick moment to note that Keiko, that Christopher Priest is talking about, is not unfamiliar to heavy metal fans. He described him as this chaotic universe, but he's a very familiar green orb that people may know from film and other stories. So definitely, just to give you a little visual and something to hook the fans of the heavy metal film.
And he's named after a whale.
And he's named after a whale. I didn't name him either. But yeah, if we have any questions, we'd love to get to them. I know we have about 15, 20 minutes.
Does anybody have any questions here in VR? Just come on over.
Just to trying to get the ball rolling, and this is more general, but feel free to just speak up, all the different creators. But we've heard about all the works you've done for heavy metal currently. As a retailer who has to order comics 3 months in advance, and as a publisher, if I wear my other hat, knowing how these come to life, you got to work 6 months to a year before it even gets to the printed page. Who's got another heavy metal project in the works that we might see about? You don't have to spoil anything, but you know, maybe just give us a teaser, if nothing else, of you know more stuff coming from heavy metal from any of you creators.
Well, just to dominate the conversation, we so Entropy is designed to essentially be an antagonist in this shared environment. He will not meet Tarna yet in the first series, but obviously that's where we're heading, and we're trying to do a very realistic depiction of how and why and under what circumstances someone would eventually become this horrible force for evil, or whatever the story is, and typically how that could happen without the character even realizing it's happening. And that's the connection to the Breaking Bad thing, which I think heavy metal ran a little too far with. But there's some resonances to the whole Walter White idea, where Walter becomes, it's not even that he becomes increasingly evil, it's that the evil in him becomes increasingly revealed as more pressure is exerted on him. So there are other chapters to this idea. We obviously want to see how Entropy performs before certain commitments are made, and obviously we'd like paperwork to exist before I say, oh yes, there's Atropy and there's Apogee. There are the other parts of this trilogy. But we're going to hope and wait and pray that we find our audience, and we will go from there.
But that series is out right now. Issue 1 is out, and with 2 coming right behind it, and that's going to be ongoing and then collected. And it does have a 318 story. It has an Entropy story.
Oh, real quick, and I just love dominating. Is that it just Entropy has hands down some of the most interesting and breathtaking artwork that I've seen in forever. I mean, this is going to be one of these books where, and I told Joseph Illich, our editor, that by the time we're all said and done with Entropy, no one's going to remember or care who wrote it or who edited it or who drove the truck to the comic book store. They're only going to be talking about Osvaldo Montos, this new artist. I don't know where Joseph found this guy. He's unbelievable. And whether you like my story or not, or whatever, in the name of God, crack this thing open and watch my guy. Watch this guy work. It's unbelievable. The artwork in this thing is off the chain.
Fantastic. You can dominate the conversation. I have a question from the audience, from someone in VR, one of the avatars. Actually, it's the one I think that looks like Mario. because avatars are kind of like cosplay, you know, in the virtual world. So, and they actually took it to another level and actually did cosplay as an avatar. Their name is Crypto Collectibles. I think we can remember that one, Chris.
Yeah.
Crypto Collectibles actually wants you to elaborate a little bit on the Joe Rubenstein story, if you don't mind. They were very intrigued at that little nugget you threw at us and wants to hear a little bit more how he convinced you that otherwise.
I'll make it real quick because I'm tired of dominating now. All right, so crypto. I was 17 years old when I was hired at Marvel Comics as a flunky intern sort of person. Okay, so I took over the key operator of the Xerox machine. I took over that position from this other punk named John Romita Jr. You know, and he was my first friend in the Marvel bullpen. He saw me and he just lit up and he ran over and he goes, "Thank God you're here." And he just reached around and took this chain off his neck and handed it to me and said, "Here, this is yours now. You know, and you have to unjam this copier machine every 5 minutes." And that was my first job at Marvel. So I was sitting in the bullpen as I did, you know, whenever I didn't have to make Xerox copies or run out for coffee. So I'd be sitting in the bullpen drawing because I started as a writer / artist, and then Dennis Cowan would come in, and he was 17. We're the same age, so Dennis Cowan would come in and chat me up and so forth. Except Dennis can actually draw. I sucked. Dennis was actually good, even at 17. The guy was off the chain. He was really, really good, you know. And he was like, you know, a babe magnet. So Dennis would always have some incredible chick on his arm. And I'm stuck here at Marvel with my sweater vest, you know, the nerd guy. Anyway, so I'm sitting here drawing. Joe Rubenstein walks in one day, and he looks over my shoulder and goes, "What you got there, Jim?" Yeah, I said, "You know, I got the Spider-Man." And he's like, "Well, what are you doing?" I goes, "I'm drawing." And he looks and he goes, "That's not drawing." And he says to me, he goes, "Look, I hear you're a really good writer. You should stick to that." And he walks off somewhere. You know, now, you know, if I didn't have these cables here, I would pick up my camera and take you into my boudoir, you know, into my bedroom here. Hanging on the wall in my bedroom is a self-portrait of Joe Rubenstein, a beautiful oil thing. It's either oil or acrylics that he did. He's a tremendous fine artist. I mean, in addition to being a comic artist, he can paint, he can draw. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
But Joe was one of my really good friends there. You know, I'm pretty sure he was joking, but when you say that to a 17-year-old and a professional like Joseph Rubenstein says, you know, you suck, stick to writing. That's a true story, and that was probably the last time I took myself seriously as an artist.
That's very cool. Yeah, I've been to Joe's house. I've seen his fine art, you know, oil paintings. It's incredible. I don't know why most people don't know that about him.
Yeah, I mean, why are they not hiring him to do covers, painted covers for Marvel and DC?
Seriously.
Why? Yeah.
Anyone else have a you know, a teaser or a, you know, something else coming out?
Yeah, I have. There'll be a new heavy metal series. You know, I wish I could tease when it's going to come out, but I genuinely don't know. However, I can tell you that there is going to be a change, and it's going to be serialized in heavy metal, and then probably released in the direct market like Star Wars as well. But it is going to be in full 20-page chapters, at least as we find out now. So in whatever issue of heavy metal that this story is in, you're going to get a full traditional direct market issues worth of content. What can I say about it? Well, you know, I've been told what I can't say, but it's a reverse Tarzan story. This is what I'll tell everybody. So
oh my God, that sounds. Oh, now we have to know. How do you do reverse Tarzan?
Well, the conceit being that there's a character. The character John Shale is from supposedly a utopian future, and he is his parents are tourists from the future, going back to visit the uncivilized past, which is our present, and we're plenty uncivilized right now. You just have to look outside your window. So
or go to Washington.
Sure. So much like the original Tarzan, his parents are killed they're killed on vacation. Again, their vacation here is in our present, which to the future seems completely unconscionably primal.
Right?
And this character, John Chell, is forced to grow up amongst these people that his supposedly enlightened family in the future thinks are primitives. But the reality is that growing up in the present and learning how to stand up for himself and defend his own identity is what makes him incredibly strong and incredibly powerful and passionate. So when he finally comes back to the future, much like the original Tarzan, he finds that even though he's supposed to fit in here, this place is posh, this place is it's prejudice, and it disgusts him. So the story picks up with what happens when he goes back to the future and has to sort of reckon with what is anything but a utopian society for those who can't afford it.
That sounds great. That sounds really great, Steve. Really, seriously.
Awesome.
Well, thank you.
I'm sure my customers and heavy metal readers will be love to check those out. I mean, one of the coolest things
And
about
I should
heavy
say,
metal,
not young adults. So for people who are, I don't mean to interrupt, Brian. I'm sorry, but for people who are angry that there was less sex and less violence in Star Wars, let me welcome you to my next book, where there's plenty. You know, we might just have some of the first ass eating in a heavy metal book, so get ready.
Yeah, let's preface this with heavy metal is really not for kids.
I know.
And
Neither of my panel appearances, but Jeromy knew that when he invited me.
One of the coolest things about heavy metal is there's that traditional classic magazine, you know, that comes out, and you guys have stories in there, and then they break out of those into, you know, their own comic book series on our shelves, you know, the comic shop. So,
which is what happened with Starward, and Starward is coming out right now.
The only ones that show up on this week are the main
Stories
events,
issue 1. You saw the
and
full,
our worlds are
full
too
cover
big
art.
to
If
be
you're in
main
VR, you
events.
can go look
Most
at
people's
that.
worlds
Nice
are.
full cover art.
So
If
you have to click
collect
on
those,
all to
it's
see
also
all the
collected
events.
into one big
And
piece.
then you'll see
That's going to have all the Star Wars girls. I think Steve, you're allowed to talk about all that. Referring to dates, though, that is definitely something we're gonna be announcing probably after New York Comic Con. We're gonna have a look at when that story is going to start hitting the magazine. That's all I can say officially.
Jeromy,
yeah,
Mark. Can I speak about
I do have another question from the VR world. I'm trying to get their official avatar name. All I have is Matt, but I think it seems like a two-part question, but I think, and I'm not really directing this towards anybody specifically. Maybe we should, you know, pick Steve or Johnathan or whoever has a really strong opinion, but they want to know what you guys feel about comic book movie adaptations, just on the whole. Like, you guys love that, hate that, and I think the second part would just be like, do you see any of your works being adapted into TV or film, or do you not want them?
I'm going to give a quick answer, and then I'm going to toss to Mark because he also needs to talk about what's upcoming. But I would just say, like, listen, I think anything that raises the profile of these characters and gets their story in front of new people is great. I think that what I've learned as a creator is, like, we can hold, like, how can I say this in the short version? I think comic book movie adaptations are great, but I also am excited for the day that we don't consider comic book to be synonymous with tape things, because we never say, oh, this is the latest prose novel. You know, like, what does that even mean? Anything can be in a prose book. So I look forward to when those things sort of, the terms are split apart, and it used to be that way, because it used to be, to get a movie adaptation, you couldn't do capes. It was things like Road to Perdition or From Hell. You know, I could go on, but now obviously superheroes are big in the mainstream. The only other thing I would say that I hope folks begin to embrace is that, you know, comics and film or TV, they're a different medium, and you know, as a creator and as a viewer, I think we tend to, and especially as fans, like, we love our lore and we love to hold on to minutia, and I love to do that in comics, you know, just like anyone else. But a thing that I've learned and have always felt that needs to be said is that, like, a direct adaptation is not synonymous with a good adaptation. And so I love that comic book movies are out there, and in some ways, perhaps it's sacrilegious to say, but I almost wish that they would take more chances in diverging from the source material when it makes sense, because to be frank, what works in a comic may not be what works in film or TV, and that goes for anything else. And so I noticed this when I was started watching movies like, for example, I've never read the Harry Potter series. And I've always found that the films from that series that I like the most are the ones that my boyfriend, who did, hates the most, because he's like, oh, well, they left out X, Y, and Z and all these things. But at the end of the day, like, the audience, intended audience for these adaptations is not the book audience. It's a different audience. So I find if that audience who has no familiarity with the source material isn't lost and finds the stories engaging, finds the characters relatable, that's the number one key. Not did every single, potion, or did every, is every plaque in the Xavier School like accurate to the comic. And with that, I'm going to force toss over to Mark so we can talk about what's upcoming and also talk about this
wait.
topic.
First, I'm going to jump in and dominate one more time.
God damn it!
Just for a second. Just for a second, but to further answer the question there, I've had a lot of my work, or several bits and pieces of my work, show up on the screen. Most notably, the very first act of Batman Begins was based on my comic book work, where Bruce Wayne goes up to the monastery and so forth. And obviously Black Panther, and then little bits and pieces have shown up here where, like, I'm watching Green Lantern and go, okay, hey, I did that. Oh, wait, so little bits and pieces have shown up. And I got to tell you, there's absolutely no greatest thrill. It's like your heart stops. You go, holy God, there's my stuff up on the screen there. And then the next question is like, okay, Black Panther made $1.5 billion. Where's my house? Where's my house? You should buy me a house for that, right? I mean, at least, okay, not even a Trump house, just a regular, house. And then just real quick is that, what conclusion that I have arrived at, and I think is absolutely true, is the more seriously the filmmakers take our source material, the more money they make. And it's like, I think the whole Bat trilogy, the Christopher Nolan trilogy, was a testament to that, as was the Iron Man film. And certainly the latest example has to be the Avengers two-parter there, is that, at some point it clicked in the heads of these people. It's not whether or not they're faithful, that's a whole different discussion, but take us seriously and don't just treat us like a joke, because you can make something like Infinity Wars and make a mint, or you can make something like Green Hornet and lose your shirt. Just imagine, what if they had done Green Hornet and taken it seriously? Holy gosh, I would really have liked to seen that movie. And now we will throw over to Mark.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because a lot of people come into our comic book store and they're like, I just saw Infinity War, or whatever movie. I want to read the comic book now, and we love that, except there isn't one comic book. They're taking pieces,
right?
Story beats, and I think that's.
But why wasn't Marvel ready for that? Why wasn't there an Infinity War, graphic novel, whether it's a reprint or new material or retelling and new material? It's just like, I think they've known this movie was coming for quite a while. They didn't wake up and go, oh, look, there's a movie. I don't know. And I'm loath to criticize Marvel because, I still work there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Heavy Metal will put out the source material. I guarantee you that, right, Jeromy?
Yes.
Mark had something he wanted to throw in.
I was just going to say, I've got an interesting theory regards the transition between.
Just speak up a little bit.
Sure. Sorry, I've got an interesting theory on why the transition between the comic book movie audience and the comic book floppy audience, there isn't much of a crossover, and that is because I believe comic books are for everybody. Anybody should be able to come and read comics, but I don't think everybody will read comics, because it is a medium that is essentially art and literature. Okay, whereas you take movies, TV series, they're much more accessible to a normal audience. Well, normal's the wrong word. To a more TV/cinematic oriented audience. So there isn't that crossover. So I agree. I think Chris and Steve both hit on very interesting points there. And that is that you can't strictly adapt something for, a comic book movie audience, because sometimes there's just not a way to transition it and make it in such a way that will both appease the fans of the source material, but also people who will want to come and see that on a cinematic scale. The transition would be too difficult. There's exceptions, obviously. Like some of my favorite adaptations are things like The Crow, which I think is one of the most stupendous adaptations of a comic book ever made. Book adaptations like Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire. I think Neil Jordan took that book and put it on screen. It was very close. But there's other things such as, say The Walking Dead, for instance, that you couldn't, blow by blow transfer onto a television series because it just, you couldn't facilitate the changes. So it's an interesting point, but I think there's two different audiences, and I think that Christopher made the point very well there, that the source material has to be respected as the solid base for a lot of our pop culture. And before it was comic books, it was books, etc., etc. There's always been a base for what would go on to be the cinematic. And in the case of comic books, it baffles me that this far in the game we're still treated like, kind of like a kiddie medium, because some of the strongest literature that's been written in the last sort of 20, 30 years has been in the comic book medium. And, well, in books and comic books, but movies are only really catching up to us now because we're a massively forward-thinking, progressive medium in terms of how we operate. So, I think we need to be taken seriously. That would be really, really nice. And that is worth the money.
Definitely. Will Jeromy, just to let you know, we're going to probably wrap it up in like 5 to 10 minutes because we do have another panel, but we were prepared for this. We've buffered like 30 minutes on every panel. I just know how these go. Once you start going, it's just like fun, right?
Yeah, I just didn't want music to start, and I didn't want like a hook to come and like pull Christopher Priest off the screen. Like I didn't want any of that to happen. So we'll go ahead and get prepped into our closing statements. I want to thank everybody for joining us at FanConXR. If you are a fan of anything you heard here, you can go to heavymetal.com today and use the code FanConXR to get 35% off of your purchase. You can go and you can pick up issue 1 of Starward, you can pick up an issue of the magazine, you could pick up issue 1 of Entropy, you could pick up The Boy Who Conquered the Mountain, you could pick up each issue of Never Never or the collected trade, which is out now, and 35% off for fans of FanConXR.
Yeah, that's like what we're considering our virtual booths, because our convention's in virtual reality and there are no booths like a traditional convention. So when they're done with the headset or watching on YouTube or in their VR app on AltSpace, they can go to your publisher website or some of your personal creator websites and buy stuff. Heavy Metal's running a special with FanConXR promo code, so it's kind of fun.
Yep. 35% off.
But feel free to plug your personal websites if you'd like as well.
So I was going to say, and that's real money. Every now and then I get these offers in the mail. It's like, ooh, 5% off of this, and I'm like, 5%? That's really not going to get me to click anything. 35%. Okay, now you're talking, buddy.
35% off all of our books and magazines. Yeah, it's a good deal. Not on the shirts. I know we have a brand new merch line. Steve is actually wearing one of them, and I'm wearing one, obviously. But we do have a new merch line. The code doesn't work for that, but it does work for all of these books, all of these titles, and I definitely encourage you to read these because we're doing 2 panels today, and I can say with confidence, and don't say this to the other panelists later, that these are probably my favorite titles. Like when Starward was coming out in the magazine, I flipped immediately to what was happening in Starward every issue when I got my copy, or when I was doing the reviews of the books. That's the story I wanted to like jump to. Same for Entropy, because obviously I'm one of those people who came from the world of the heavy metal movie and the Lochnar, Tarna, Keiko, all of that, like big to me, and Never Never was such a crazy retake on such a beloved story. And again, the cinematic telling of The Boy Who Conquered a Mountain is just fantastic. So
yeah, we do have
guys.
another heavy metal panel coming up at 7 o'clock. We got publisher Matt Medney. We got Brendan Columbus, Blake Northcott. Actually, Bob Fingerman may or may not be on there because he's
a little under the weather.
He's a little COVID-y right now.
Yep.
Although, you know, it's a safe environment. You're at home right now, and that's you know, whether you're in VR on Zoom, you're isolated at home. So that's why this is the safest convention in the world. And then we have George C. Romero. So that's at 7 o'clock for everyone watching who wants to do more heavy metal. See Jeromy again.
Give him a time zone. Give him a time zone.
Well, 7 p.m. Pacific.
There you go.
Which translates to any other time zone, like 10 p.m. East Coast, and et cetera, et cetera. It's all in the graphics we do.
So let's go down the line and let's talk about where people can find you and what stories you have coming out. It doesn't necessarily have to be heavy metal. I know that, you know, I'm here, so there's no pressure. You can promote your other books as well, and stuff that they can pick up at the lovely Golden Apple. Let's start with Mark. Where can people find you, and what do you got upcoming that we can talk about?
I mean, sure. You can just find me on social media. You can hit me up on Facebook or Instagram. I don't use Twitter. I find it a bit too much for me. But you can just hit me up on Instagram or Facebook. I am currently working on a couple of projects for heavy metal. Well, when I say working on them, I've finished them. It's just a matter of them going into production now. I've got a few other projects that I can't talk about, and they're with different publishers, but you can stay up to date with me over on just on Facebook or social media. The one thing I'll mention very briefly before we move on is that I do have a title I can kind of talk about coming out with heavy metal, and that is Prax. And Prax will link into a lot of what Christopher and Steve have been talking about, in that heavy metal, as is, it's a multiversal sort of setup with the Tarny universe and all the various other universes. And I think, you know, my title will very much play into that. But again, I'll reveal more on that as we go on. So just hit me up on social media, Badman McCann on Facebook, and or on Instagram, and just Mark McCann on Facebook.
There you go. And Johnathan, you have a new series coming out right now, and where can people find you?
So I'm on Carry On John on Twitter. I think the best place to find me with all the things I'm doing and see the imagery of the work I'm doing with comic books, I think is way more interactive is on Instagram, and that's Johnathan_Chant. Yeah, I've got a series out at the moment, horror series with Blood Moon, called Up at the Desert Line, and it's basically an alternate take on the Great Plague of 1665 and 1666. I guess this is like the original nightmare of when you look back at things like Night of the Living Dead. I know we've got George C. Romero coming on soon. Of the original nightmare of the look of the zombie is very much based on the old plague look of what they physically looked like when they were going through from that period of time. So my idea was originally from a film script in 2009 and adapted into an 8-part series. And the take is that what if people did die from the plague but then come back and they completely disappeared at the time they were dealing with a time period of muskets and swords and people didn't live to a great age anyway, and dealing with that, but also like following the parents of it and we shift between the King 65 and King 66 to where this place of what made him become this way, how did he become this way. There's also a great drama story around his character as well as what's happening within his horror realm and horror series. So Golden Apple actually has been picking that up every month, which is fantastic for us to learn a bit more about that. The series is coming out monthly, an 8-part series. We're coming up with issue 3 next month in time for Halloween. I'd love to do the second part. I have a series really set for The Boy Who Conquered the Mountain. But that would be when I have time to begin that and continue that. To further go into the character of Caleb, who was the boy that became a young man in the story, and where he goes from here. And I'm very much interested in the Empire Strikes Back of the series, where I feel like this will be even better than the original, definitely. But those are my two main ones at the moment. I'm always doing other stories, but yes, use the places to get me is Instagram and Twitter, and I'm always showing where I'm going to be signing and doing things like that. So, yeah.
All right, and Christopher Priest. I know we talked about Entropy coming out. Where else can we find you? And we're getting the wave from the back of the room, just so everybody knows.
The
Okay,
music's starting, yeah.
Yeah, the music's playing. Okay, so you can't find me. I think social media is a very dangerous place, at least for me. But my website is christopherpriest.com. Vampirella Year 1 is currently shipping. It's Vampirella's coming of age on Draculon. It was very gorgeous art by Ergun Gunduz. Black Adam, of course, is shipping now. Boy, I wish that book could get a little promotion. You know, how are people going to find that book? And Draculina for Dynamite as well. Projects for Marvel that I can't talk about yet because they're embargoed. Big projects for DC here that I can't talk about yet. But oh boy, I'm done.
All right,
you guys.
And the Steve Orlando, where can people find you, and what do you got coming up?
Sure. I just need to make sure to say, contrary to my busting on the movie, Priest's Black Adam book is a fucking killer. So everybody should be checking it out. I was very excited when that was announced, and so was social media, Priest, even though you loathe it. So I will just tell you that. Where am I at? Well, you can pick up the direct market, that is to say, the comic store editions of Star Wars, ongoing right now. We'll see my next serial from Heavy Metal soon. Let's go ahead and say in 2023, which is pretty broad. That gives us a 12-month window. Starting in January, you'll see Scarlet Witch from me, who, you know, is the local jackass, but I am with Sarah Pacelli and Russell Dowderman. There couldn't be a better art team, making me look like I know what I'm doing. And still ongoing is Marauders and X-Men Green. And there's more than that, but that's plenty to check out right now.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Golden Apple and FanCon, for having us. We do have our next panel at 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And I will actually be in VR for that one. So I will be swapping into that virtual world with you, and that will be a virtual panel. So look forward to that.
Congratulations on being the first panel ever at FanConXR. Maybe we'll look back 10 years from now and laugh at this, but I think you guys did a great job, and really informative, and just a great diverse panel and titles, and just so awesome. And you guys keep up the great work. We'll keep selling your comics. You guys keep making them, and Jeromy and the crew will keep publishing them. Thanks so much, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. And thanks, Golden Apple, for their support of the work. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Always, all you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Oops. Thank you, everyone. We have 9 more amazing panels coming up. If you guys want to head back to the lobby, there's a portal in the back, and then the next portal will be ready in just a few minutes for our panel for, I think it's Aftershock. I think Aftershock Comics is next. So just head back to the lobby, and then you'll be able to go into the next world for Aftershock Comics.
Thank you, guys.
And that one will also be a Zoom panel. We're trying to get all these creators into VR, but sometimes it's an uphill
Little
battle
difficult.
with some of them.